I see a lot of people are getting annoyed with the fact that Mount Melleray Abbey in Waterford is closing, and people are trying to campaign to save it. They're writing to the bishop, they're writing to the Cistercians. I see people are sharing it on WhatsApp, and people don't like change, and they don't like to see, some Catholics don't like seeing this happening. Um, I do want to remind Irish Catholics our faith is not in a building, as nice and as beautiful as it is. Christ did, in his Great Commission, he did not say, go and build chapels around the world. Christ said, go and make disciples around the world. Of course, as faith communities, it's beautiful to gather in a sacred space where we can offer the sacred liturgy in reverence, and give worship together in a community. It's truly beautiful. But I will say to you, some of the greatest faith experiences that I've had in Ireland weren't in great monasteries. Some of them were on farms, in sheds, and I'll say no more about that because during lockdown we saw all of these great monasteries and churches, not being very welcoming to Irish Catholics, and the underground church that we had during COVID, for me, showed far greater faith in a time of when many people needed it, and that's just the truth of it. And so my thoughts on this, well, we need to understand that over the next 40 years in Ireland, 1,000 chapels in Ireland will close, of the 2,600 chapels around Ireland. They will close because we do not have the people to fund them or the attendance there. Weddings in the last 10 years have gone from 14,000 or 15,000 weddings to 7,000 weddings in Catholic churches. So with these demographics, in the next 10 years, will they have again? Vocations have dried up to many communities around Ireland. And I suppose it's a wake-up call for Irish to understand our mission, your mission, is to pass on the faith. It's to know the faith and to pass on the faith, to be a disciple, to make your to open this beautiful relationship with Christ so that others are disciples of our Lord. If somebody is a disciple of our Lord, they're more likely to give their life to the church, to in a religious life or priestly life or lay ministry or something like that. And that is the only solution to the faith crisis we have in Ireland, is a discipleship crisis. We have to stop teaching people the idea of Christ and start teaching them how to be a disciple of Christ. Unless you teach somebody, unless you disciple them into a relationship with Christ, teach them how to have a relationship with Christ, which is the traditional faith, traditional apostolic faith of the church. That is the only thing that will save the church, is the traditional apostolic faith of the church, what the apostles taught. Because what the apostles taught is how you will have union with God, which has been, the tradition of the church that has, over centuries, has been, like a pearl that has been, cherished and polished, and passed on, and that's it. If we do not pass on the apostolic faith to the next generation, there's no point in complaining about closing monasteries and closing churches, and because this is going to happen. It simply is. So that is my ask to the Irish, to Irish Catholics, to people that are contacting me, and what do I think, and should we do something? I've never been to Mount Melleray, and the importance now is to pass on the apostolic faith to the next generation. What fed previous generations maybe will feed them as well. So this is where we are at the moment, and this is, you will see a lot more closures like this. A lot more places that people hold dear will close because there isn't vocations. And simply the reality of the story. The places that seem to be getting more vocations are the places that are traditional, that are offering an encounter with Christ, a structured life of prayer. And that's what the youth of today are looking for. They're fed up of post 1960s bland felt Catholicism, kumbaya, blah blah blah. Well, I was fed up with it in the 80s. I haven't changed my mind then. I just thought it was cringe. As a teenager, I thought it was cringe. And I'm even more of that opinion today. I mean, one of the greatest experiences of the divine of faith that I ever had was spending a few weeks in Mount Athos with monks that have lived in places for the last millennium. Age old divine liturgies. Simple life of prayer. And it really stuck with me. It really, really, really impressed me. But, God calls us to renew the church, and what he's calling us to do is to pass on the faith. To know the faith and pass on the faith. To make you have a discipleship with Christ, to know Christ. You have to know him. You have to know the Master. Go to the Master and know the Master. That's why I'm encouraging people, as I said many times, to read Maria Valtorta. Why am I so fixated on Maria Valtorta? Well, because if you read the canonical Gospels, it does say that if everything had been written down about our Lord, there wouldn't be enough space to contain all the books. And Christ has given us this literature now for our age, so that you can understand how Christ discipled those that followed him. He taught, continually encouraged, and spoke about the Father. And that's what we need to do. It's all there in the tradition of the church. If you study Maria Valtorta, you're going to be brought back to the tradition of the church. The path to discipleship is a path of giving up one way of living to accept another way of living. And that is what our mission is. I don't think the Irish church should be focusing on saving buildings. Our focus should be on passing on the faith, on leading people to a personal relationship with Christ, discipleship with Christ, theosis, deification, union with God, name it as you will. What the doctors of the church have been teaching us for centuries, the great saints. That's what we need to pass on. Because some of the best faith experiences that people are having in Ireland are not in big abbeys. They're in sheds on farms. And some people will know what I'm talking about, and others might not. But I will tell you, during lockdown, it was an eye-opener for me. So the future is to pass on the faith, and that's what I'm encouraging people to do. So don't bother complaining to bishops or religious congregations when monasteries close. Monasteries come and go, communities come and go. You look at the likes of the Institute of Christ the King that has bought the Jesuit chapel in Limerick, and they bought the Presbyterian chapel in Belfast, and then they bought the Sisters of Mercy chapel in Ardee, beautiful convent in Ardee. Who knows? Maybe the monks of Les Barreaux in France will come and buy the monastery in Mount Melleray, and you can have a thriving traditional Catholic monastery. I mean, they have vocations galore. There are traditional Benedictine monasteries that have dozens of young vocations, because they're offering something serious. They're offering a serious life of prayer, connected to the tradition of the Benedictine monastery, Benedictine spirituality. And let's face it, Latin is quintessentially Benedictine. The liturgy of the hours, the Mass is quintessential Benedictine spirituality. People want that. People want that. There are men that want that. They want to go to, experience what the liturgy as Dom Columba Marmion would have experienced it. What's wrong with that? Offer it. I guarantee you will be flooded with vocations, and you'll be flooded with laity that will come and support the monastery. When I went to Les Barreaux in France, I was so impressed at the vocations of all ages in the monastery. Young, middle age, all different vocations, and their thriving community, laity coming to their masses, laity coming to buy from their shop. They were selling wine and olive oil. I mean, that's what they make, how they funded the monastery. Beautiful, massive shop that they had there. And, they have a sister monastery there as well for women, for women, Benedictine sisters. I mean, it's not rocket science. Be faithful to the tradition of your be faithful to the roots. And the world is crying out, the Catholic world is crying out for that. It is crying out for that. That's what the next generation is looking for. They are fed up with bland 1970s Catholicism. Yeah, they really are. It's not attracting anybody. It's not enticing anybody. Nobody wants post-Vatican II Catholicism as, they've invented it. The stats are there. The statistics are there. The younger generation of priests that are getting ordained are more traditional. It's been weeded out. The liberals are getting off. Liberal Catholicism has no roots, and it has no future, and it has no fruits. It's just the ego project of some boomers that went nowhere. It's time to renew and reform, and to move forward, to take what is good from the past. I mean, if we can have a Mayan rite that has been concocted together over the last couple of decades, we can have a Benedictine, the Mass that the Benedictines celebrated for, 1,500 years? You might be surprised who you get in the door. It's working in other locations. It might work in Ireland, so my thoughts are, if you want to save Mount Melleray, maybe ask some of the Benedictines in Les Barreaux if they would send over 20 or 30 men to Ireland to do a foundation. Put the call out. You might be surprised. A traditional monastery might do Ireland some good. I know there's another one up in Meath, and they have, they have a lot of inquiries, young men. So, offer it. We'll see what happens. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.